Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Deandra. I've been a nurse now for 2 years working in the ICU, and I decided to do this video on how to get the most perfect nursing report, and I'm gonna go step by step with you guys. This is something that saved me so much time. I learned from my preceptor. She was a nurse for 30 years. And I learned in nursing school the S-bar, which is a great tool, but I feel like it had too much information, and sometimes the doctors are asking more specific questions and you have more than one patient. You don't have time to be filling out like every little detail. I feel like you need the main points, be specific, and there's no way that you're gonna memorize all this information when the next day you're gonna have a whole new patient. So I'm gonna go with you guys. It works for me. I still use it today, and let's go. First, I just want to say I invested in these when I graduated nursing school. I thought it was going to work for me because then you could keep your notes in here. I swear it did not work out for me. I was losing it half the time. If there was an emergency, I can't like fold it and put it in my pocket. So I would not invest in this. Then I thought I needed something like this where it folds, and still like I was losing it, and I would find it like when I went back to work the next day. So that's why I wanted to show you guys my way, and that's something that I learned, and I think it's so perfect if you work night shift and you don't have time to get to work early, because that extra 5 minutes of sleep is so worth it. Let's go. When you get to the hospital, I always get this computer paper and I fold it in half. I work in ICU, so we usually just have 2, maybe 3 patients if we're like crazy busy. But you could fold it more ways depending how many patients you have. And then here you could have your 2 patients. Usually the nurse that's handing you off report will have the patient's chart with them already. And because of HIPAA, I'm not going to show, all the details, but they have like these stickers of all the patient's information, their name, the MRN number, the doctor, male, female, date of birth. So I usually take it, I rip it, and I stamp it to my little notes here, my little nursing report note. And then right away I write down the room number. So let's say, hold on, I'm gonna do a little box here where I usually put the sticker, and then I'm gonna put the room number. So let's say it's 3215, and then I like to highlight it just to like emphasize this is the patient and this is where they are, so you don't get anything mixed up. Then I go right away, why did they come in? Let's say they came in for patient complains of cough, short of breath, and fever. When did they come in? They came in today. Okay, so then always write down the day, because that's something the doctor is going to ask, when they came in and why. So let's say they came in today. I'm just going to say a random date. Let's say January 20th of 21. Did they get intubated? That's something really important to know. Did they get intubated in the ER? It was an emergency. Or when did they get extubated? So let's say the patient got intubated in the ER. So you're gonna write intubated today. So January 20th. So that already cuts off your awake, alert, oriented. But you always need to ask, because what if they're like intubated but they're like opening their eyes, flinching? So that's something that you need to ask. But I usually write down like this, intubated, and the date. Now, you need to ask their medical history. Are they diabetic? Do they have hypertension? So I usually write down in the same spot here. I write down in a little box. Let's say they have hypertension and they're diabetic. Or let's say they have Parkinson's too. Because if they have some sort of tremors, it's not anything like new when you're doing your assessment. So I do it like that. So they got intubated on the 20th. Now, let's see. what are their vent settings? So let's say they're on PRVC. I'm going based off ICU. So if they're on a tele floor, they might just have like 2 liters nasal cannula, write it down, clear lung sounds throughout. But this one, let's do PRVC. Let's say they're on 40% of oxygen. Let's say they're on PEEPA 5, respiration of 22, tidal volume 380. So then that's how I do it. 40% oxygen, respiration, PEEP, I always add a plus sign, and tidal volume 380. And that's how I always remember my chart, because the doctors are always gonna ask that. Half the time they don't even go into the room, they're relying on you and your information, and sometimes they may ask you to like adjust the oxygen level. So, or when you're like turning, bathing the patient, you need to bump up that oxygen to 100%. So it's always good to know. And another thing that's good to ask is if the patient desats when you move them, turn them. It's always good to ask. Those type of questions are good to ask. When the nurses are being too picky and asking silly questions, I'm like, we don't have time for that. Homegirl's tired. I'm like, all right. So now next one, we're gonna do heart. So let's say the patient is sinus, but let's say they had a history of AFib, or that's something that you need to write down because the doctors need to know that. And then right away check their blood pressure. What has been their baseline? Is their MAP above 60? Because if not, they may need levo. But let's say this one is sinus, heart, let's say blood pressure is on the low side. So you should expect some heart medications or some sort of drip on them. Now, let's say if they got intubated, was the NG put in? Was the OG put in? Do they have a PEG tube? These questions you need to ask. So let's say they already put in the OG when they got intubated. So they have the OG tube and it was put in the same day, so January 20th. Do they have any food running? And if they do, always make sure it's in the orders. Everything that you write down here should be in the orders. If not, you need to adjust that. So OG, let's say they're pending Peptamen. So I'm gonna write down Peptamen. AF, what's the rate? Let's say it says to run it at 20 ml an hour. And I'm gonna highlight that because this is something that I need to do because it didn't show up for the time that he got intubated. It didn't come up to our floor. And then sometimes they don't deliver at night. So this is something that you have to address with the day shift nurse. Now, did they put in the Foley? Did they have a Foley? Did he have a Foley at home? Because if now, you might have to put in our own. So let's say they put in the Foley. And what is the urine output? Let's say it was 1,000, 1 liter. Okay, so at least his urine output is good. Now skin. Did they come in with any ulcers? Is the skin intact? Let's say this patient has some bruising on the arm. So you're gonna write arm, bruising, because these are something that you're gonna document as you assess the patient and make sure there's no ulcers, because if not, you're gonna have to open another file and put skin not intact and all this stuff. Okay, I think we went down the whole list. So this is how it looks. Very simple. And I'm very big on like note taking and doing like your own version. If you look through my past videos, I'm big a note taker. I feel like everything that you write down, you retain. So this has helped me so much. Now we're gonna draw a line. And I like to do all my meds down here. So since I work night shift, let's say the patient has meds at 8. They have maybe something at 11, maybe at 3, and then 6 in the morning for lab. I'm just gonna write down a few meds because I'm not. Let me see, let me write. I'm just gonna write down a few meds because let's say they have Pepsid, they're on insulin. Let's say they have zinc, vitamin C. Let's give him a little melatonin to go to sleep. Let's say he has insulin again, steroids, Medrol, and then in the morning he has vitamin C and insulin. All right, but this part here is something that I do after I get report. This is something I do by myself that I write down, because then I have the layout here, because sometimes the doctors are like, oh, do they get meds in the morning? And it's here. You don't have to like look through the computer. Sometimes your computer's not working, so this has come in handy for me. And then as I go through the night, I like cross it out. Okay, they received this, they received this. Now it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. Now they get that. Boom. Easy. Now, the next important question to ask are the IV sites. Where are they and are they working? So let's say he got a PICC line, double lumen. Okay. They're both working. Make sure you flush it. Just please make sure it's working, because you don't want to deal with that headache. And then let's say they're pending a central line. That might be at night or in the morning. So highlight that. You see, just like that. These are the two things that you're probably gonna do, and then this you might have to set it up. So it's like you can't miss it. Like the information is right here. What's running through these lines? So let's say this patient has propofol. Propofol at 30 mics, and let's say now they have Levofed at 2, because their blood pressure is running low, their MAP is not above 65. So let's say it's at 2, and then I like to put a square around my drugs, because this is something that I need to make sure that I'm on top of. I don't want it to run dry, because you don't want Levofed to run dry. Your blood pressure is tanking on you. So this is something that I need to be cautious like throughout the night. Now, the last thing that's important to add are the labs. Always write down your abnormals and the main important ones. So let's say your hemoglobin is 8.5. In our hospital, if it goes below 7.5, they're gonna give blood. Hematocrit, I don't know, let's say it's 30. Let's say the potassium is 3.2. So you're gonna highlight that, and you're gonna address that when the doctor's round. You're gonna say, hey, the potassium is this. Calcium 8. If they had ionized calcium, Vanco, always write that down to know your Vanco trough, because they might ask. Sodium, I don't know, 135. And then I like to box this, because these are something important to know. Boom. There's your notes, and this is one patient, and now you have to do a whole other patient, but it's like a little book, and in case of an emergency, you have all the information here. You could fold it as many times as you want. Fits in your pocket. You could put in your wow, and it's light. It's not something heavy like this. And really, like, you do not have time to like read through this information when you're at work, even though it's helpful. But as you work, this becomes second nature to you. You really don't spend the time reading about the temperatures. It's going to tell you on the computer. If they're acidotic, it's going to say it on the computer. So you really don't need this heavy thing. This is something so simple. This is something so simple and easy. And here it is. Alright guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe below. I'm probably going to do a video on how to give report. That's also something so important, that you have to read through all the information, because you're going to get some nurses that like to intimidate you, ask you so many like specific questions that you need to have everything down. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Talk to you guys later. Bye.